Welcome to the Golden Crane Award-winning Color Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. I am so happy to have Christine Salcedo on today's podcast. She was born in San Diego and raised in the Bay Area. She earned a bachelor's in anthropology and a master's in public administration. Prior to completing her academic journey, she served a tour in 2006 for Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. She is active as a chair for a federal council and continues to give back to her fellow veterans. Today, she continues to serve her community as a healthcare professional and mother of 4 children. Christine, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited because, well, first off, thank you for your service.
My pleasure. I never really know what to say when people say that.
I know it's, and I truly mean it because it's so admirable to do that, to do, be in the military and especially that you were in Afghanistan. So I wanted to jump right in and talk a little bit about your military experience and especially being a female AAHNPI. There's a whole lot of acronyms nowadays.
Yeah.
Veteran.
Yeah. Gosh, where do I start? So I am the first in my first female in my family, first of all, to join the military. My history is all like my father and his brothers were in the military, with the exception of one. The one girl in their family became a nurse. Go figure. So typical Filipino or Asian.
I was gonna say
right?
that. I mean, our hospital has so many nurses.
Like high percentage of nurses are Filipino in our hospital. But so when I joined, it was my sister and my mom were like so ecstatic and happy for me, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's so brave," and blah, blah, blah. And when my dad found out, he's a retired Navy veteran, and he did not talk to me for 2 days because he wanted me to finish college and he wanted me to be the officer in the military. He's like, he was also all for it, but he wanted me to finish college first. So I was like, "Sorry, Dad, I had to, follow my own path," and I did it. I actually got injured when I was in boot camp. I got a stress fracture on my hip. And that was the first time I cried in boot camp because I didn't want to leave my team. Like I was already invested. We had that camaraderie. I was like, I was supposed to graduate with these guys and gals. And I had to go to rehab for 2 months just to get better. And I ended up graduating with a different class. But, once I got into the military, I did the reserves because I wanted to, fulfill my parents' wishes to finish college. Right. And I wanted to get a degree and everything. I was like, yeah, I'll do the reserves. What are the chances they're going to deploy me? So I came back after boot camp and AIT, which is my advanced individual training. It's like our tech school, basically where you learn to do your job. So my job was military intelligence analyst. And I went there for 6 months in Arizona. And then I came home. I was like, oh yeah, I'm home. I can go back to school, live my life. 6 months-ish later, I got orders to go to Afghanistan in 2006. And I had to go by myself. And it wasn't even with my unit. It was with, I just got randomly selected to go and support this team out in Afghanistan. And I didn't know anyone. So I went for the first time, this green little 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old maybe at the time, and just went to Afghanistan with this whole new unit I'd never met before. Turns out everybody didn't know each other.
What was running through your head though when you got the call?
Oh, it was actually a letter. They give you orders on a piece of paper. It's super old school, and then they say, hey, you are being tasked to report to, and I was I kept reading the words in support of Operation Enduring Freedom on the orders. Am I really going there? What the heck? I was excited, to serve. And I was, super scared at the same time. Oh my God, this is happening. And I wanted to make sure my unit was going and they weren't going. And so that was even an additional stress factor right there. Holy,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up going to pre-deployment training out in New Jersey, and that's where I met the whole team. And
let's go back to the decision though of because your dad interestingly served and was like, oh heck no. So what led you to that decision to do that at that time?
So I did like a year of community college. I wasn't ready for a big university yet after high school. And I was like telling myself, I'm just going to go to community college, feel out college and see what it's like. Cause I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. And then, and so I went in for like a year and a half, doing like my AA degree there, just, so you can get transfer credits to university. And I think after like a year, I just had this weird calling, this drive, this weird instinctual feeling to do something bigger than me. So I voluntarily went to the Navy recruiter's office just to see how it's like. I took the ASVAB test and everything, and I didn't really feel at home with the Navy. So I got a call from the Army recruiters. I guess they all talk or whatever, and it felt good. I had a connection with him. I like went over like the different types of MOSs, which are like the different types of jobs. And it resonated more with me than the Navy did. Cause the Navy was my dad's path and I wanted to, follow his footsteps, but no, the Army was my thing. And I think I just wanted to have that immediate sense of success while I was in college. Cause some people leave the nest right after high school and they go off and they go to college elsewhere or they travel the world. I guess that was my way of doing that. And I just wanted to do it myself. That's what I wanted to do.
So for those that are civilians and don't know much about military culture, how would you kind of explain the Navy versus the Army? I don't want to be too reductionistic or overgeneralized, but you said, the Navy is my dad's thing and the Army resonated. What about that differentiation spoke to you?
I think culturally, or like, I guess military cultural wise, like, I guess for me, I didn't want to risk being in a submarine. I didn't want to be on a ship. Those were the things that kind of like turned me off to the Navy. And my dad also thought I was going to be in this place with a whole bunch of guys. And, as female, he's protective. He's scared for me to be just an enlisted individual, not an officer telling people what to do. I think that's what he was scared of. Because, if you're an officer, if you finish college, you can become an officer in the military. You can go to OC, which officer candidate school with a college degree. And he wanted me to go that pathway just to kind of be in a leadership role. I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to get dirty with the rest of the guys and really know what it's like. And then with the Army, I don't know. I joke that it's my favorite color because it's green. And, but I really don't know. I just think it just spoke with me more. And I was too scared to join the Marine Corps because I felt like I didn't want to go to boot camp with a whole bunch of guys because I thought it was co-ed. Ironically enough, Marine Corps boot camp is actually separated male and female. And then when I joined the Army, it was co-ed. So,
and were there other females on your unit?
Yes, there was. It was a good time. I met a lot about people and a lot of people. It's like, boot camp is just a whole nother segment we could talk about.
Time. I mean, let's do a follow up on that because I think a lot of people don't understand, and especially since you got injured, right? That's really tough. So, okay, so fast forward, you are deployed to Afghanistan. What was that experience like, as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, no, it was actually really awesome. I met a really great, I don't know what to call her, coworker, friend. She was like my bunkmate pretty much. Like when we got into country, we flew in on a commercial plane into Kyrgyzstan. And then Kyrgyzstan from there, we plane into country. And we landed in Bagram Air Base. That's where we were pretty much based out of. But a lot of people pretty much fly into Bagram and then they go to their like regional areas. But for me, I was actually in Bagram. That's where like the hub of like units resided. I guess you could say. And then we lived in these, I don't know, have you ever been in a clubhouse, a tree house before? They're basically wood, right? That's what we lived in. We lived in these little huts. We were in Dragon Village. That's where I lived. And they, they were just these wooden huts, like just in lines. And that's where we lived and where we slept, and we showered in these connexes, those like big metal like storage containers. They
Okay.
repurposed those as showers. So we had to walk to the shower, walk back, and you carried your weapon everywhere. I was always on guard. You're not supposed to go anywhere without like a battle buddy is what they call it. But sometimes you just had to go. You just had to go. And I worked 12 to 16-hour days every day, no days off. I worked in the night shift. I worked from like 6 to 6. And then I had to stay up and do things. And that was my day. Every single day was like Groundhog Day. And I think, and everyone's always curious, like, what kind of combat experience did you have? So like, I think the closest to combat experience that I've had was not as crazy as others, but we did, we were surrounded by we lived in this area where the Soviets used to be. And so we were surrounded by minefields, right? Minefields were just everywhere. And it's crazy because the locals the kids would just walk through these things knowing where everything is. And it's just like shocking to me. Like I'd be on the other side of the fence. I'm just looking at this kid on a donkey and he's just walking through the minefield because he knows we're all in the left. I'm like, you can explode, bro. Like,
yeah,
what? I'm just in shock. So that's like culturally shocking to me. And then, just the fact that the locals, like, I don't know. And when you look at them, you just don't know who's carrying what,
Yeah.
Like, they're wearing all this garb and like, what are you hiding under there? Like, you just become so paranoid.
Mm-hmm. And hyper vigilant, right? Because
Hyper vigilant.
there's like who to trust,
Mm-hmm.
and also I would imagine if I saw that as well, like a kid on a donkey, it's almost like there was a acceptance that this
Mm-hmm.
was life and
Mm-hmm.
this is how we're dealing with it.
This is their life. They wake up, they're raised in this environment. Everything's militarized where they are. And some of the locals even work on base. And yeah.
So you come back. What was that transition like?
Well, it's funny you say that. My first time back was when I went home on leave. So you get 2 weeks of leave for that whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went home, like, you can go anywhere. They'll fly you anywhere. I could have gone to Japan. I could have gone to France. I could have gone to no passport. Right. And I'm like, no, I want to go home to my husband. It's my previous husband at the time. And I want to go to my husband and see him. And I want to see my family. And then I went home. You only get 2 weeks. I went home and it was a terrible time. I was like out of my element. No one understood me. Everyone just felt like it was me. But then I noticed that I was totally out of sorts and I didn't feel like myself. So fast forward, I come back into country. And the moment I stepped off that plane and I was back in Afghanistan to go work again, I felt at home. Like, mm-hmm. It was the weirdest feeling ever. Cause I just felt like, this is a place where I feel safe. Ironically, this is a place where I think it was more safe in terms of my emotions and my mental status because everyone there was on the same boat with me.
They understood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But at home, I was more at war at home than I was in country. And I thought that was like the weirdest thing. But anyway, fast forward, I finally do come home in December of 2006. And it started all over again. That transitional period, not being able to relate to anyone. And I told my sister to enroll me back in school while I was still in country. And I just told her, hey, like, enroll me in school, sign me up for these classes. I was being really like, productive in that sense. Cause I know in my head, I needed a routine when I got back. Cause if I didn't structure exactly, because if I didn't, I'd be all over the place. And so she did that. And luckily I was able to get into the fall semester or whatever. But in the transitional time, my mom, she noticed a big change in me that I didn't notice, because she just had to call me out. Of course, moms will do that to you. She goes, "Why are you so short with me? Why are you so irritable?" Like, I was irritable. I was short with people. I had no tolerance for stupidity. That was like my mentality. Like, I just like, oh God, none of you have any common sense. I was so mean. I was so mean. And I felt bad. I felt really bad, but I couldn't actively control my emotions and my mental state. Like, I was pissing everyone off, and everyone else was pissing me off. Like, it was just so toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into this hole of alcoholism. I drank. I had all this money. You don't spend anything over there.
Yeah.
I had all this money saved up. I paid off my car. I did all my responsibilities, but I was like, man, I'm going to go buy shit. I'm just going to go buy things. And I splurged on a really nice bottle of vodka, and I started drinking by myself. And this was before I started school, because school, there was like a gap,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would just sit on my parents' porch, and I would just, pour myself a glass with some cranberry juice. And that was me for like a good 2 months until I started school.
Did it numb you? What did it do for you?
Yeah, I think it just took me away from my mind. Like, it shut my mind up, and it just put me in a sedative state. Yeah. And I just wanted to be away from my thoughts, I think, and just disconnect, to reconnect. I don't know. It was weird. It was a very crazy feeling.
So how did you cope with that once you realized, oh, probably sitting on the porch drinking vodka, and I do have to go back to school? How did
Mm-hmm.
you work on some of the symptoms of PTSD, it sounds like, that you're experiencing?
So yeah, I didn't know. I had it yet until maybe 2 years after I came back home. So I met a friend like a year or two later at the VA, and she told me she was pushing me to enroll in and get service connected so that I can, get checked out. And, we were very, I guess from Vietnam War just veterans in general, they're very proud people, and they don't want to say anything's wrong with them. If you see me, I'm grateful to be just walking and talking and have all my limbs, right? And I was like, I don't need to complain about anything. I don't need to like tell people my problems, and I'm fine. But it wasn't fine. So I actually went in to go see if I can get service connected with my hip problem, because I got injured.
Yeah.
And when you go through all the questionnaires and the application process, they ask you about your mental health, and I'm like, I'll give it a try. Let me see if something's really wrong with me. So when they go through the approval process, they actually schedule you for appointments to see if you actually need to get done, and they check your medical history and all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
when I actually went to go see a psychologist or psychiatrist, I'm not sure what she was, she asked me all these questions. I answered her honestly, and I told her all these things. And then it turns out I got service connected for PTSD and not my hip problem, because I wasn't having any more, issues today. Like, I'm fine. And so I guess they didn't approve me for that, because it didn't persist. But the PTSD part, I was surprised, because I was like, really? I'm like, what the F is wrong with me? Like, and so I'm fine. And I really wasn't. And that's when I realized, oh my God, something's not okay. And I started getting help. And yeah, that was surprising to me.
Well, and you stuck around at the hospital that does serve veterans, and
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of a new mission. What led you to continue to serve within the federal government?
So when I was actually in school, and I thank myself for putting myself in school, there was a little small pocket of veterans that knew each other just from the I guess there's a veteran center on campus. And I think a lot of colleges are doing this now.
Yeah.
So I got to connect with some of them, and some of the people that were in my program, they pushed me to try this internship out. And I was like, and they're like, hey, it's paid, you can, it's really flexible. I'm like, yeah, I can use some flexible paid in my life, why not? I didn't, I only had a daughter at the time. I was like, why not? I can do this. And, I had I was actually on welfare at the time because I didn't have a full-time job. I was just trying to figure stuff out still. And I was like, why not? So I went into this internship, and the internship turned into this great opportunity for me. And now I have this career, and it was the best thing I ever did, because if I hadn't met that fellow veteran, if he hadn't pushed me to do this, I wouldn't be here right now.
And just for the listeners and, watchers, you are in a big boss lady position. I'm so proud of you. I honestly think like you have some of the keys to, some of the most behind the scenes kind
I
of
know
situations.
things.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so glad to connect with you right now when we're out of work, because there's so much that you've experienced. And also, again, you've started a second career, so to speak, and gotten to a very high level.
Yeah. And it all happened so fast. And I think a lot of it had to do with my military background. Had I not had that discipline and that kind of situational awareness and everything I learned in the military under my belt, I don't think I wouldn't have progressed and moved up as quickly as I did, and gone through college as quickly as I did, because before I just wasn't a studious student. I just never had it in me. But I think I in deep down, when I made that decision to sign up, I knew I needed it for myself, because I just wasn't going anywhere.
Well, it gave you more life experiences. And I think they always say, well, it's okay to take a gap year, but especially in the Bay Area, people are like, let's go to college. Let's, get the advanced degree. Let's get this 6-figure job, whatever it is. Right. And so I think there's a different level of professional and personal experience that you bring to the table that not everyone has.
Right. Exactly. And it definitely helps, especially with the environment that we work in, to be able to relate to our customers and our patients. And it's been really rewarding. It doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does, but
Yeah.
but I will say, I've been in the system for, over 10 years. And so one of the things that really keeps me around, at least, are the veterans, right? Is like providing that service, especially on my end, where we see homeless, substance abuse, PTSD, et cetera, and finding them employment. That's just so key to feeling like you're productive and feeling like you're a part of something.
Absolutely. That belonging, that sense of belonging is real and dear. And they say don't try to fit in, find where you belong. And I feel like this is where a lot of veterans belong. They just, they just need to find their purpose. They need to find their purpose again.
Absolutely. So, what is one story that you could tell or wish to put out there about your military experience and like your personal development?
Personal development. I think one of the biggest things that I took away in the military was I was really fighting for myself, and finding myself at the same time. So, you witness and you think, when you think military, you think female, you think about all those stereotypical things of like women being victims, and being a victim to sexual assault or sexual harassment. And that was really big in my mind, because I didn't want to be a victim. So in my journey, I kept this really hard persona amongst my peers, especially the males, of course, because I didn't want to put myself in the victim position. So I put myself in the voluntary role, where in boot camp, especially, like, they asked for volunteers. Like, I always wanted to be the one to volunteer. I didn't want to always be the one that was submissive and passive and just tell me what to do. And I think that really helped me develop some leadership skills, and really show and prove to the others, like, oh, this girl's not someone to mess with. One time, a guy told me, he's like, oh, don't mess with, we'll just say my last name now. Don't mess with Salcedo. She she knows kung fu because I was a token Asian girl. So that was like another stressor, right? I was like one of the only Asian women in the platoon. You know, I was a female, so I'm a female minority. And, you know, I feel like I had to try even harder, like at least 2 times harder than the rest of them, just so I can prove who I was. And one really awesome story that really helped me boost my confidence was when there was a guy who was talking crap about the girls. And for me, especially because I was put into a platoon sergeant leader role. And the drill sergeants, they see everything. You know, they see the bullying, they see the shit talking, they see everything. Yeah. He pointed this one guy out, and just happened to be a white male, and they put him and me in front of everyone to hold our rifles out like this, kind of just out in front of us. And this is after doing a whole bunch of push-ups and being like smoked and just being totally. He put us there and put our rifles like head to head with each other, and he made us like hold it up until the first one, whoever falls first. And I was like, oh, this is on. Like, it's on. Like, in my mind, I'm like, it's on. This guy's going down because he talks so much shit. And so I kept my rifle up. He started shaking. And the moment he started shaking, he dropped his rifle. And I was like, that was like the most liberating, like invigorating feeling I ever had. And ever since then, I think one of the biggest things is just don't let yourself be a victim. Like your mind is stronger than your body, and you know everyone's perception towards you is everyone's watching, and I don't know, just that was just one of the biggest things, just not to be a victim. And I teach that to my kids too.
I was going to ask, what sorts of values do you transmit to them? And especially, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you had 4 because I have 2, right? And I'm like, girl, you need a medal just for that. So how has that played out based on your experience?
So I really looked up to my drill sergeants. I feel like they were the most influential people to me growing up, because I feel like you're just going through this whole reborn again, like life when you go through boot camp. It's like a whole, you know, you get reconditioned to everything you know. And because they were so influential on me, and they made me feel so safe and made me trust myself and my equipment, and they just made me learn more about myself. I definitely do apply those attributes to my kids, and those characteristics and those lessons, because you know, I was just having a conversation with my boss. She was like, the bar is just as long as you keep your kids alive. I'm like, it is true.
Oh, well, I like Mila Kunis's thing of like, we're just trying to make sure our kids don't grow up to be assholes.
Exactly. And if you are, be a good one with purpose, because you just, I'm like one of my kids, I get mad at her so much because she's such a punk sometimes. And, and I can't get mad because she's just like me. So I can't get mad. So when it comes to like discipline and, you know, being a loving parent, like you just really got to listen to them. I definitely do listen to them. And I try to lead them by example, and just everything military taught me is totally embedded and woven into my lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the really hard part, whether or not you've been to the military or not, is your kids, it's normal for them to annoy you and irritate you. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to kind of have those learning experiences, and they are mirrors. If you say something, you'll probably hear it again 10 times. So it's really hard to also self-regulate and self-manage yourself, and at the same time, like, give them that structure and discipline that they need.
Exactly. And with and just talking about that, and about our mental health and everything growing up as Asian kids, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't talk about what's wrong in your head or what's wrong with your feelings, because you're just supposed to suck it up and move on. Yeah. And that is definitely something I didn't want to take from me from the military and from our Asian culture, because a lot of it's like, just suck it up and move on. But it's definitely not something that you want to pass on to your kids, because I think one of the times one of my daughters had some mental health issues, she was going through some meltdowns. I couldn't understand what was triggering it. And, typically if it was my mom, she would just whoop me or something, right? She would just spank me or something. And
it's not funny, but that's like the old school mentality,
totally
right?
old school. Exactly. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And, I was like, okay, maybe she'll grow out of it. This is like, just went on for like 2 years. And I didn't understand. Well, it felt like 2 years, probably like a year. But it wasn't until I found like a little journal, like, entry that she had. And she was writing stuff. And there was a line in there that said, I don't want to live anymore.
Ugh.
And I was like, that's it. We need some help. We need to go do something about this. I'm not going to have this in my family. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having it, but I just I wanted to nip it in the bud before
get her the help she needed. Yeah,
exactly. Do what my parents wouldn't have done for me. And we went and sought help and therapy and everything. And it's amazing how much they open up to strangers versus to me personally.
I agree.
And it turns out she's getting bullied at school. She was getting bullied at school, and all of that, like, pent up, like, internalizing and just taking it all in at school, because she doesn't react. She's very, like, strong, right? She has this really strong persona, but when she comes home, she would lash out on things that we just don't understand. What the heck ticked you off? And because it all sourced down to her getting bullied and picked on at school by this one girl. And I had to have these conversations with her teacher, and we had to just redo her whole setup and seating arrangement. She didn't say anything for a long time. So just one of the things I don't want to take from the military is just to suck it up and move on. It's really important to really bring those conversations out in the home.
And bullying is so rampant in school. I mean, there's a lot of kids who have unkind or nasty behavior, I will say. They say the nastiest things, even though they're not true. I think there was one boy who called my daughter fat. She's teeny tiny like me. And it obviously didn't make sense. He called her and her friends that. Also very skinny, the other girl, right? And so
fat with a PH.
And so, the boy, I noticed that when we went to like an open house, how his either parents or caregivers were talking to him. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, wow, that's where it happens. But at the same time, like when you're in elementary school, you don't think about what is his family like. And so I really talk to my kids about, you don't know what's going on in someone's home. And at the same time, you need to set very firm boundaries as to what you'll tolerate and not tolerate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And ask those questions, right? When they come home from school, not how's your day? Like, what made you happy today? What made you mad today? Those are the questions that you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to keep that as a routine, especially at the dinner table, right? Like those are the only times we are actually in one place at the same time. I really try to take advantage of those moments to bring out what's going on in the kids' minds.
Well, the interesting part is, even though we have a couple bedrooms, my husband still wants my kids to sleep in their bunk bed until they are older, because he wants them to tell on each other if they do something. What? When they're teenagers, they're still really young, right? But it's really funny. I mean, I don't know how long that will really last, but that's his rationale. And if they ever go on a date, he's like, table for 3. Like, I'll be.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was like, good
You're
luck
just
with
setting
that
yourself for a big headache later. They're just going to want to rebel.
I know. So, but I think that camaraderie, even among siblings, is so important. And I'm sure because of where we each live in the Bay, like your house is huger than mine, but because it's, a smaller house, everyone can hear everything. And in fact, I'm really surprised I haven't heard much from them, because I said, hey, I have a podcast at 12. It picks up everything. Like, can you not use your mixer, So, I mean, but it's a joy, right? And again, I think that your experience and, so much wisdom there, that it'll be so helpful to your kids.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, a lot of things are going on. We work in a federal system. We're always at the mercy of different funding sources and, higher level government.
Mm-hmm.
But what continues to resonate with you at that level to where you continue to advocate for veterans and stay in a system despite, the bureaucracy, the red tape that
Right.
we experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times I'm constantly checking in with myself because I am a patient, right? I'm a patient employee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always constantly thinking about impact. How is my actions today going to impact a veteran tomorrow? Because I can put myself in those shoes, right? I can see myself receiving that care. I can see myself getting impacted by this action. Okay, like when I make decisions or when I provide input or feedback, I'm constantly thinking, okay, what if that was me?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it makes it easier for me to put myself in those shoes and to continue to support and advocate because I am serving myself pretty much, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
or my family or whatever. And it's just kind of easier to make that transition to just, it just makes it so much easier. Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about your advocacy work because there's been so many hate crimes
Mm-hmm,
against
mm-hmm,
our communities. And honestly, like the whole suck it up is also a part of, especially the older generation, even though
mm-hmm.
elders are being targeted. And so what messages would you want to send our community, given you continue to serve in that as well?
Well, I think some of the messages I'd want to share is, you know, it's like depending on like who you're talking to, right? Like, are you talking to a troubled teen who doesn't know what the different Asians are, or like you're talking to just a random neighbor or whatever? I think bottom line up front, just be kind, talk to people, and you'd be surprised what kinds of things you will learn about each other just from opening your mouth. And that is one of the biggest challenges in the kids' culture and mindset today is they are lacking a lot of those social skills
Yes.
to communicate with each other. And I'm just so grateful that my kids can talk to me about things and open up now, and they're just so honest, and I can tell, you could tell when they're lying, right, or hiding something.
Mm-hmm.
But like when it comes to like, the greater public, it really does make a difference if you just say hi to your neighbor or you
Or
say hi to the
smile.
person, smile, exactly, those nonverbal cues, just even in the grocery store, because who knows if that person is thinking about freaking planning a mass shooting or whatever. Maybe you said hello to them that day and they just made their day. I don't know, but just to be kind and be respectful and just really acknowledge, really see that as people. I go jogging with my neighbor, and she laughs at me every time I say hi to someone who passes the opposite direction. She's like, "You're so friendly. You say hi to everybody." I'm like, there is a reason behind that, and
Mm-hmm.
and it makes a difference. It really does. It makes an impact on people's lives.
I love that. I mean, you're living with intention no matter where you go.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yep.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for spending this weekend, guys. We recorded on a weekend to fit our schedules and not have some separation with our day jobs. And so thank you so much for being so vulnerable and opening up.
No, it was definitely cathartic. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to the Color Success Podcast. Listen, like, subscribe on all major streaming platforms, YouTube, IG, and if you want exclusive content, you can join our Patreon. All links can be found at colorofsuccesspodcast.com.